What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel. For today's video I'm going to do a review of the KASE circular magnetic filters, which I picked up from my Nikon 14-24 2.8S lens. Now when I got this lens I was weighing out my options if I want to stick with circular filters or if I want to get rectangular filters, and they both have their pros and cons. One of my biggest gripes with circular filters though is they're just kind of a pain to twist on. You have a tendency to cross thread or not get the threads properly and then the lens pops off. And this could be a challenge, especially if you're standing over a stream and you don't want your lens to fall into the water, which has happened to me in the past. Another downside with circular filters is in cold weather. If you have gloves on, it could be a pain to get the threads lined up properly. And I've also had filters that just remained stuck onto the lens because of how cold it got, and I had to bring it back to the car and warm it up and just to get the lens filter back off. So it definitely has its downsides. And when I was looking into rectangular filters, they're a great alternative, but they're also bigger and bulkier, and you have to get a whole new unit to attach to the front of your lens. So after doing some more research, I came across these KASE magnetic filters. And the way it works is you get the filter and this magnetic ring, which I already have one screwed onto my lens right here. And then you just take your filter, put it over the magnet, and it locks right into place. And then you could attach other filters on top of this as well. So it's a really great concept, very easy to use and easy to take on and off. So I thought that was even faster than the rectangular filters, and I really want to try them out. Now, full disclosure, KASE did not send me these filters. I bought them out of pocket, and I wanted to test them out and share my thoughts with you guys. So we're gonna jump onto the computer and I'll show you the color cast and any sharpness loss that we might have. So let's hit the computer. Alright, so here we are on the computer side of things, and I have a set of images of the sky. This is going to help us determine how much color cast these ND filters have. And then I have another set of images of this brick wall, which is going to help us determine if we lose sharpness when I add an ND filter to the lens. So jumping back over to the sky, I took all these images at 14mm with the 14-24 2.8S lens at f8. And my ISO was at 100. The only thing that changes for these images is the shutter speed. Obviously, when I add the ND filter, it darkens it up, so I have to do a slower shutter speed. But other than that, everything else stayed the same. So this is our base image. It has no ND filter on it, and we're going to compare it with our ND8. And right off the bat, you can see the ND8 has a yellow cast to it, which I'm going to adjust with the white balance in a second. But first, let me just show you what they look like side by side. Okay, so on the right is our base image with no filter, and on the left is our KASE ND8 filter. And obviously, you can see the color cast, but it's not too bad. I'm pretty sure we could fix this up relatively easily. So let's close this out, grab my eyedropper tool. You know what, let me select just that image only. And I'm going to pick somewhere here in the snow. Okay, that cooled it up considerably. Now let's compare the two. Again, on the right is our base image, and on the left is the ND8. And man, it's pretty hard to tell them apart. I actually think I prefer the ND8. Looking at the sky, just the clouds, they don't have that magenta tint to them that they do on the base image, and the trees look pretty much the same, maybe a little bit warmer here on our base image. And yeah, it looks really good. Obviously it's a little bit warmer here in the snow, and I could always warm this up and bring it back a little bit. Maybe I went a little bit on the cooler side, but overall I'm very impressed how close this gets to our actual image without any ND filter. So let's hit done and go to the next one. Alright, so this is our ND64, and again I'll compare the two. Okay, so on the right is our base image, and on the left is our ND64. And because this was a little bit longer of an exposure, it looks like I pulled out some shadow detail. I might have overexposed a little bit. It looks like I blew out the highlights in the snow right here, and that's probably why it's a hair brighter. But we can see the color cast of yellow again, and we're gonna fix that up. So let me select this image, I'll grab my eyedropper tool, Pick a nice neutral area, and let's grab both those images. On the right is the base, on the left is the ND64, and it did a really good job. A nice blue sky. Doesn't have too much vignetting for ND64 filter, which is awesome. I don't really notice too much of a difference in the corners compared to our original image. Don't forget now this is a little bit brighter, so that's why we're seeing a little more detail in the trees. And I could always cool this down a little bit more if I think these trees are too warm compared to our base image. But so far so good. Let's hit done. Now for this final image, I ended up stacking the two filters, so I think that's what, 3 and 6, so 9 stops of light for this shot right here. It gives me a 1 second exposure, and we're going to just color correct it right off the bat and compare it to our base image. Alright, so again we have our base image here on the right. This has no ND filter. On the left is both the ND filters stacked together. I did a quick color adjustment using an eyedropper tool. I'm sure if I spent a little bit more time I could actually get it even closer, but just with the eyedropper tool it did a really good job getting it very close to my base image. So very impressed so far with the color cast of these filters. So let's jump over to the brick wall and see how well they maintain their sharpness. So just like before, this is my base image here with no ND filter, and then the next shot is my ND8, and let me compare the two. On the right is no ND filter, on the left is the ND8, and you can see that color cast that we saw in the blue sky. It's not even really noticeable here when we actually have a subject in our foreground, so that's a good thing that that color cast is very, very minimal. And I'm going to zoom in starting with the middle, and we're at 200%. Let me go up a little bit more, really pixel peep these. So at 300%, man, it's hard to tell the difference. They are both really sharp. This is at f8 ISO 100. And let's start scrolling over towards the sides. Yeah, it doesn't look like I'm losing sharpness at all. Let me stop here for a second. They both look really sharp, and I'm surprised. Typically when you start putting glass in front of your lens, it starts to degrade the quality a little bit, but this is holding up really well. Yeah, I could barely tell if there's any difference. It almost looks like the side with the ND filter is a hair sharper, believe it or not. And that might be because it's, it's darkening up the image a little bit. I think there's a little bit of a vignette because of the ND8, but it's not by much. You can see it's a little darker, but yeah, they both look really sharp. Let me jump on this side really quick. And zoom in. Yeah, it's really hard to tell. They both look spectacular. So let's jump up to the ND64. So let me close this out. So there's my 64 and compare it with our base image. Let me zoom out. Left is ND64, right is our base image. Start in the middle again. And we're at 200%. They both look really good still. Man, are my eyes playing tricks on me, or does it look like the ND64 is just a hair sharper? And I left this on manual focus, so I didn't adjust the focus for each shot. I basically just focused my first shot with no filter, and then all I did was add the filters on. So the sharpness shouldn't change, but it almost looks like the ND filter is just a tad sharper. Let's go over to the corner here. It doesn't look like it's losing any sharpness towards the corners either. Let me just scroll up. Let's go over here on this side. Yeah, they look virtually the same to me. As I was saying before, it almost looks like this is a little bit sharper than the side that doesn't have ND filter on it. So that's pretty impressive. All right, let's close this out, and we have one more image to compare. This is our stacked ND filters, so it's the ND8 and the ND64. And you can see the color cast is a little more prominent now as far as that yellow compared to our base image. So I'm going to just cool this down a little bit. But very easy fix. So let's compare them. The left is our stacked filters. Let's start in the middle here. They look virtually identical other than a slight little more yellow from that color cast. But I just fixed that really quickly, so I'm sure I could dial that in a little bit better. Sharpness still looks really good. Let's jump over here. Very hard to tell any difference at all. And I'll jump on this side really fast. Let that load up. You can see it's darker here from the vignette since we have two filters stacked. So that's just one thing to consider. But overall, that vignette is not too bad. And it's still maintaining sharpness on both corners and center. So very, very impressive filters so far from what I'm seeing. And you know, I haven't tested all their filters out, but this is a good sign so far. Now the downside is these filters are pretty expensive, averaging about $200 per filter, and I'm strictly talking about the 112 millimeters. I'm not sure what the prices are for, you know, smaller size filters, so just keep that in mind. And they do have a kit where you get 3 filters, a bag to hold those filters, as well as the magnetic ring for a little cheaper. You get to save some money. But the problem with that is I think it's just a CPL, ND1000, and a 0.9 grad. So you don't get to customize it. It's just those 3 filters, and I honestly don't use those filters that often to justify that. So I wish they would make it customizable. That would be great. Then I could pick 3 filters that I use most commonly, which would be, you know, my ND8 and my ND64, and I could throw in a 3rd option in there as well. So hopefully in the future they update that where you can customize the 3 filters that you want to pick up and save some money. And another downside, which isn't the end of the world, when you do start to couple these up with each other, they are pretty strong magnets, so separating them could be a little tricky. If you have nails, it's a little easier. You kind of get your nail in between them. But if you don't have nails, trying to just pry them apart is a little tough. So you definitely want to get something in there in between them to really lift them apart from each other. That's going to make life a little bit easier. Not the end of the world and not a huge downside, but just pointing that out. And you know, that's pretty much it so far from what I could see as far as the negatives go. The great thing is when I put those on, I could still put my lens cap on to protect it while I'm walking around. So all in all, I'm really impressed with these filters, and you should definitely check them out. I will leave affiliate links down below, which helps this channel out. So again, hopefully this helps you guys out. Take care. Bye-bye.